Hey everybody, Mike with Games Played Badly, and today on Session Zero I interview Grace, who is the CEO of Snowbrite Studio. Now, they have several different games out right now. One of them is a digital game that just dropped on Steam on August 6th. Now, this interview was shot on August 6th, but due to some technical issues, it took me a while to edit it. Unfortunately, the video quality from my side isn't very good, but Grace looks fantastic, so it shouldn't really be a problem, and audio is great. To that point, we're still working through some technical issues with some cameras and stuff, so hopefully everything will be fixed in the next interview. We're also going to be talking about their Kickstarter, which is running right now and is for Tea Time Adventures, which is an actual TTRPG. It kind of fits right on top of 5e. It sounds very interesting. There's some new spell mechanics in there. But it's also the way that these games were created and crafted, I think you're going to find fascinating. Grace was a fantastic interview. We had lots to chat about, and I can't wait for you to watch that. I also have a shirt on, and I wore the shirt specifically because of Grace. And it says, "Kindness is contagious." That's kind of really what I think this interview represents, is between Time Tales and Tea Time Adventures, they're all very inclusive games, games that invite people from different backgrounds, different ages to want to participate in. And I think it's the methodology behind it is just fantastic. If you would like to get one of these shirts or something like it, go to gemfirefly.com. When you peruse and you find something you like and you go to checkout, put in our code BADLY, BADLY 15 to get 15% off your order. None of that comes back to us. It goes right to Matt and his good works. I can't thank him enough for being our sponsor. So if you like this video, please click subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and tell all your friends, because we need more subscribers. I would love to produce more videos and get some additional equipment, things like that. Snowbrite Studio is an amazing company, and I can't wait for you to learn more about them. That interview starts now. Hi, Grace. How are you?
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
You are part of Snowbrite Studio. And if people have not checked out your website, they need to, because there are various projects going on right now. But why don't you sum up what the company is all about?
Heartwarming games and experiences. That's really kind of where we're at. So we don't necessarily stick to a particular medium, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to get across is like wholesome content that you can learn from, and content that's often kind of filled with pride.
Very good. I was looking through the website, and a lot of that stuff that was up there made me very excited. You have a current Kickstarter out right now. Why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah, so we launched on Tuesday. It's called Tea Time Adventures, and the one line about it is that it's a wholesome 5e compatible tabletop role-playing game book filled with adventures that come with tea pairings, gardening advice, cooking advice, conflict resolution advice, and all that other sort of stuff, all wrapped into this like really beautiful, magical little hallmarky kind of town. So we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I just kind of looked through the Kickstarter video, and I was like, wow. There's also some interesting spell mechanics there too.
Yeah, so oh my goodness. I've actually been working on these mechanics for probably about 7 years now.
Oh, wow.
Because it's just an idea that I've kept waiting and waiting for another game publisher to publish, and I just haven't seen it yet. So finally I was like, this has to get out there. So the way the thinking here is that a lot of times, at least when I'm a GM or even when I'm a player at the table, which isn't too often anymore, but the GM part a lot, the player part not so much. But a lot of times when spells are being cast, it's like, I don't know, looking up something in the dictionary, so somebody's got like rules over here that they're looking through, they're measuring distances and all that sort of stuff, and everybody kind of checks out until the dice fall, and then it's like clap, clap, move on. And it didn't feel like it was a good it didn't feel exciting, right?
Mhm.
So this new mechanic is actually, it's shared spell casting, cooperative spell casting. So each person at the table gets a card with pattern on it.
Mhm.
Each person holds on to that card, and then a timer starts, and you need to pull tiles from this middle area and actually match the patterns on your cards. Each card is a spell component, so the spell only succeeds if everyone is working at the same time towards that shared goal, so that the spell actually goes through. Now there's some things, some components are required for a spell, other components are optional, right? So like you might succeed at the spell, but one person isn't able to pull off the extend effect, right? So the spell goes off, but it's not quite as long as you'd hope to, and other things like that. And the cards themselves are at different difficulty levels as well. So you can kind of say like, like I know Barry's going to be really good at this one, so I'm gonna give him the hardest card here, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to keep an easier card for myself or something like that. And you get to know each other. It's one of those things that I've really seen in like Galaxy Trucker, which is a little bit of an homage to that, and some other
Mhm.
games like that, where I've been so impressed at how when you're playing the game, you physically get better at the game as you're doing it. Like you're
Mhm.
learning the strategies, but also like just the memory of doing it increases as well. And so what better analogy for a mage spellcasting, I think. Like you literally will get better at spellcasting as you play more. So I'm really excited about that. I don't know if it all comes through the Kickstarter, but that's been a passion project, that little component of this for me.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, because you're really leveling up.
Yeah,
It makes perfect sense as to why spells are cast at higher levels or you're more efficient at it, is because you're physically learning how to cast these spells.
it's so fulfilling. And
Mhm.
and it's just sometimes, especially with like, I've seen it time and again, right? Somebody casts fireball, they measure out all this stuff, they roll the dice come back and they're mediocre and they're like, all right, I got the average damage, let's move on. But I guarantee you, at least in all the playtests that we've been doing with this, like it is exciting when you pull off a spell, because you're all racing against time to try and get that. Now, I should say that this component is completely optional. We recognize that some people who play tabletop RPGs have mobility issues or arthritis or other sorts of things like that. Totally fine. So there's actually it's a really fun component to have to the game, but it's not necessary either
Yeah, that's good.
for completing the adventures.
From what I read, this is all 5e compatible.
Yep. Yeah, it's actually built on top of 5e more or less. So it uses a typical D20 system. If you've ever played if you've ever played a D20 system, probably third edition up, you're gonna get into it and you're gonna be like, this feels pretty similar.
Mhm.
But the little tweaks that we've made along the way to some aspects of it have kind of ripple out into large differences, right? So like I've talked about this before, but like sleight of hand isn't called sleight of hand, it's called borrowing, right? Because there's always a chance that you might give it back. Or um, uh, charisma isn't called charisma, it's called personality. And why would you want to be somebody without a personality, right?
Right.
um, so like we nudge the conversations in different ways just by kind of changing the language and some minor things. So it's still easy to play, but it starts to feel a lot more different. Now there are optional rules that let you really kind of transform the experience, so it stops feeling quite so D&D. But what we expect most people will probably do is they're playing their long campaign that they have their level 15 whatever
Mhm.
doing, and they're like, you know what, Jenny can't make it today. Let's break out Tea Time Adventures for a one shot, and just kind of relax and chill for a little bit before we go slay the Dragon King. So
Right. Well, I love. I love the name Tea Time Adventures. It makes it sound so light.
yeah, yeah. It was originally I was pushing hard for cozy mysteries, since this is inspired a lot by the cozy mystery literature subgenre.
Mhm.
But we wanted something with a little bit more spice to it. So Tea Time Adventures is what it ended up being.
Yeah, that's spicy. All right.
Yeah.
So, what from the standpoint of the development of this game, I know that artwork was a big part of it. That's shown in the actual video. But um, so how was it to? How long has this entire thing been in development?
Uh, well, like I said, if you take the Harmony spell system out, because that's, like I said, been a personal project of mine for probably
Right.
about 7 years now. I would say that we've been working on this for about a year and a half. So that was when some of the first pieces of artwork started coming out for it. Now we've been holding some of it back. I really want to show you all what a fin folk looks like, but we'll probably be showing that off in a week or two. Um, but yeah, we have a full-time artist, Quill Colette. They are amazing,
Yes.
absolutely amazing. And we have Bria Lancaster with us as well. She does design and layout and a ton of the illustrations as well. And then we've been working with a number of other artists through like smaller partnerships and things like that too. So there's a fair number of hands in this. And the one thing that we wanted to do was to make it a visual experience. Like, we wanted to have you open this book and be like, this is like an art book on my coffee table, or
Hmm.
tea table if you prefer. And like, so we are actually we're gonna we're gonna stuff illustrations on like every single page of this. It's a 200-page book, and we're just gonna it's gonna be stuffed fill. So like, even if it ends up on somebody's table and they don't play, it's still gonna be a kind of a piece of art that they can hold on to.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, you're really lucky to have people within your circle who can do all this, because I know it can be a point of contention for a lot of creators to actually hire artists to do this. It can be expensive.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's always expensive to live, right? But like, but we decided when we founded our company that if we were going to do this company, then we were going to pay everyone living wages, and we were going to keep things in-house when we can, so that we could be fair to folks, right? And
Mhm.
give them an opportunity. But and art was it's just so high on the priority list. I remember, you know, some of my favorite modules back in like third edition, City of the Spider Queen, and some of these other ones, and I'm like reading and reading and reading, but I'm like, it's like 30 pages until the next illustration here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so here, especially because everything is so keyed in on being cozy and welcoming and warm. It just felt right to make sure that this was really a visual medium for it.
I think it's a way to adoption, isn't it? I mean, when you think about, especially if you're trying to engage younger players, having all that artwork in there will really, honestly, just guide them right into the book.
Absolutely.
It's a
Yeah.
page turner just from the standpoint of looking at all the beautiful artwork, but they're also probably reading through it as well.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people who've fallen into Magic the Gathering for that reason, right?
Mhm.
Like, they start collecting the cards because they're miniature pieces of art, right?
Oh yeah.
And eventually they're like, maybe I should learn what these numbers mean on here too. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where collectible card games really come into play, from that standpoint, is a lot of the artists are just brilliant. I mean,
yeah.
it doesn't matter the size of your canvas, it's a canvas.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and now it's much better than my own efforts as a GM. I always avoided doing sketches whenever possible, because it just confused the matter. Be like, look,
yeah,
here's a
I
cat with two tails, and they're like, I have no idea what we're looking at right now.
right. And that kind of harkens back to when I first started playing D&D. What one of my favorite books to look at was the Monster Manual, because every
Yeah.
page had artwork on it.
Yep.
And that goes all the way back to the first edition black and white scrollings, which I love that style. All the way to when third edition came out, and it was beautiful color artwork and just kind of gorgeous on all the pages. It seemed like, for some reason, and yeah, I love it. And you have a very diverse, talented group of people around you.
Yeah, yeah, we're actually an LGBTQ plus studio. A number of us most of us identify as LGBTQ plus, but we also have made it kind of a point to bring on people with different perspectives, that ranges across neurodiversity and disability, and really a whole bunch of different lenses. It's never helpful, both from a gaming experience and from like a business experience, when you get a bunch of people in the same room who all have the same idea at the same
Yeah.
time. I mean, maybe it moves faster then, because everybody's like, you thinking what I'm thinking, and then it just kind of runs. But like, but if you're designing for if you're designing for people, if you want to create something that's actually new out there that feels different,
Right.
you need to be surprised. And how else are you going to be, how are you going to be surprised if you're making it with your next door neighbor who you've known all your life and you're always on the same page? I don't know. So we really like having folks. We're actually a digital office. We have people located. I'm here in Cleveland with Quill, but Carrie, our comms person, is over in California. Bria's down in Virginia. We're just all over the place, coming from all different walks of life right now.
I think there could be a case made for echo chamber mentality.
Yeah.
And it basically breeds very little perspective. And so what you end up doing is if that person is not part of your echo chamber or doesn't believe the way that you believe, then you've effectively cut them out of the product that you're producing.
Yeah, we see this with games all the time. I think a lot of people think, myself included for a long time, that games are like a great equalizer, right? Like anyone can sit down and love a game. And I think that's still true. And I also think it's true of books, right? Anyone can sit down and like a book. Like there's nothing inherently one-sided about like the medium of books. But when you start talking about individual pieces of art within any within any collection of media, then you start really talking about identity and personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you set a book out, you sometimes those books are designed or speak to different populations. It's the same thing with games, but actually turned up to 11, right? So
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of folks bring in something like League of Legends, right? Really popular video game. And they're like, well, all kids can like it because it's a video game. And it's like, well, League of
Right.
Legends has between 80 and 90% of their player base is male.
Mm-hmm.
And their marketing knows that. And their marketing team targets men. And that becomes a cycle where they develop more content targeted towards men and things like that. So it actually, anyways, I'm getting off a little bit
Yeah.
on a
No,
rant here, but it actually, but I was just gonna say having more people making more games only helps, right? It brings more people in. Every game doesn't have to be for everybody. We can have really unique, really powerful experiences that speak to smaller groups of people, and by raising all of those up, I think we're all a lot better off in the gaming field.
I completely agree. If I could give you a standing ovation, I would, but I'd be out for him. You're preaching to the choir on that one. Um, so what I love about
I'll tweet it. You can retweet it.
so why don't you tell me what makes your current Kickstarter unique in the Kickstarters of the world?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a whole lot like this out there. This is kind of it's a primarily non-violent, warm and fuzzy, cozy little series of adventures, really, that you can take anywhere with you. I always remember as a kid, I loved geek culture and would carry around my D&D books and role-playing books in general and all that sort of stuff. Oh, I always found I had to like make a few excuses for some of the content in there. And you can rest assured that everything here is 100% wholesome. It's just a perfect little break from some of the other more intense stuff you might be doing at the time.
That's wonderful. I mean, and that also allows us to bring children into our gaming environments and kind of get them used to role playing and things like that. Now, so that brings up an interesting point. So you were telling me earlier about a game that's currently on Steam right now. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we just launched. Well, let me rewind. By the way, that having kids or again, if you have elderly parents or things like that, this Tea Time Adventures is actually a perfect entry point, right? Because you can actually teach a lot of practical skills, gardening, cooking, conflict resolution, things like that through the scenarios. So we're really excited about that. But yeah, one of our other games is actually launching on Steam right now. So we are a digital production office as well. And yeah, that was a process. So that's been in work for about a year and a half, 2 years too. It's called Time Tales. And it's all about two time traveling cats from the 1980s who have noticed a bunch of glitches in history and they have to go fix them. but the trick there is that the way that they fix them is by learning actual skills in game design and game development. So the first episode, which is releasing August 6th, I believe, uh, is all about three-dimensional space. So as you're playing through it, you're moving things along the x-axis, the y-axis, the z-axis, and actually using an interface that's very similar to 3D modeling software. And it was designed as a way to on-ramp learners. I say learners because really it could be anyone of any age, on-ramp learners into three-dimensional thinking, so then they can move on to software like Unity and actually begin designing games. And so the second episode, which will be coming out later this year, will focus on things like scaling, rotation, and more translation, and kind of those core 3D competency skills. And hopefully by next year, we'll be getting into some coding as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's who doesn't like cats? I know there are some of you, and you're horrible people. But who doesn't like cats? Who doesn't like the 80s? Well, I'm kind of a product of the 80s.
There's a few of us around who like cats in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was really fun for us because we were designing and testing with kids who were about 13 and 14. So we went through a whole pilot study, 4 different schools, to see if students were actually learning from the experience, which they were, and really invested in as well. But we embedded so many 80s references in there. And we're like, I know these kids aren't, these 13-year-olds are not getting these references, but their teachers are. I tell you what.
So. Yeah, their teachers and their parents are probably. Yeah. There's some meta there, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, so you have one of the interesting things that I want to point out is you kind of have a background in this, don't you?
Yeah. So I've been an educator for a dozen years now or so. I've taught pretty much at every level. I've taught after school, informal, in museums, university, middle school, and high school too. I've also worked at the policy level. I worked at the U.S. Department of Education on education policy. Helped, in fact, with some of the legislation around the most recent reauthorization. And yeah. Oh, and I worked at Smithsonian too, where we were constantly looking for ways to make learning fun, interactive, and really provide that on-ramp for students into science, technology, engineering, and math. And so we're hoping that the work that we do, they don't feel like learning games. You know, they don't feel like your traditional chocolate covered broccoli of like, hey, you want to see the next picture, please solve this fraction. They feel like stories, because that's what we are. But we want Time Tales to be a way for a kid or like I said, any age learner to say like, maybe I should learn some 3D modeling, some game development, things like that. We want Tea Time Adventures to be an on-ramp for people to think a little bit more deeply about their environment, a little bit more deeply about what they can do with their backyards, food sustainability, cooking, all those sorts of things that I think over the past year during the pandemic, we've realized those are pretty important skills to have, right? So this is a good way to have some of those conversations with your kids, with your parents, with yourselves.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I applaud everything that you're doing. I think it's fantastic. I'm actually rather disgusted that I didn't find out about you guys sooner. And I'm just happy that I know about you now.
We are, here's the little known secret. Every single person in our company, I don't think I'm missing anybody. Well, let me back it up. Most people in our company type B personalities. We are just like all introverts, wearing our little sweaters, drinking tea, and hanging out with cats. So it's been a big push for us, really, this Kickstarter in particular, to try and get our name out there. And I think we started with like 100 followers on Twitter last spring, just because we weren't really putting the effort into social media, and now we're close to 1,000, I think, on Twitter at least. Yeah. So we've been working hard at getting that message out there, because we recognize that people aren't going to have these experiences unless we tell them about it. So
I agree. I think what you're doing is just phenomenal, and I can't wait to see. I know quite a few educators, and I'm curious to turn them on to all of your products from the standpoint of Tea Time Adventures or
Time Tales.
Yeah, Time Tales, just because I think it could be very helpful in some of their classroom environments. And again, it's not chocolate covered broccoli, I mean, so from the standpoint of they're learning, but they're learning by doing because they're motivated to do so.
I've always been a fan of the saying, you learn from every game. It's a question of whether you want to learn what you're learning, right? Like there's definitely been some moments in first person shooters where I'm like, I am so learning that I need to go here and then here and then here and then press the button and then do this and I'm like, why do I have all this stuff up in my head? How is this going to translate to anything else in my life? Or even Katamari Damacy, which is one of my favorite games of all time. It's where you roll around a little ball and collect stuff and I'll go outside and I'm like, I bet I could roll that up, right? And I'm like,
Yeah, right.
definitely learning. But here I feel like we're trying to provide options where these experiences that you have can lead to productive activities and pro-social behaviors in real life too.
Well, that's phenomenal. I cannot wait to get a chance to see everything when it comes out. I will definitely be looking on Steam. I didn't know this stuff. I used to do work for I won't name the company, but they produce an educational software, which was an absolute hunk of garbage. It was constant issues with teachers and activation codes and bugs, and it seems like we spent more time trying to repair it than we did actually using it as a teaching tool. So
yeah,
but I love it. I think it's fantastic. Okay, so Kickstarter is going on right now. We have some Steam stuff happening. Did you say something is happening right now? You said August 6th something dropped?
yeah, August 6th is when Time Tales hits the Steam store. So
Well, that's
so that should,
today.
yeah, that's today.
Holy poop.
Also
Okay, so
awesome and
that's
friendly.
today.
Yeah,
So
no,
that's today.
yeah,
And
by the time
sorry.
people see this, yeah, it should be around. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have some new stuff coming out, another episode coming out toward the end of the year. Yes.
Yeah. And that one's going to be all focused. So the first episode's all focused on the American Revolution
Mhm.
and Sybil Luddington, who most people haven't heard of, who's like Paul Revere, but was only 16 and she wrote about twice as far. And then the other one, episode 2 is going to focus on the 1920s, particularly looking at Amelia Earhart, as well as Bessie Coleman, who's another kind of underrepresented figure in history.
So you get to go back, learn about people who may not necessarily have been represented well in the history books, and also fix what's wrong through your game.
Yeah, not everything that's wrong, but at least the glitches.
Well, yeah. Yes, I get it. I do something kind of fun toward the end of my videos, and I ask 5 very hard-hitting, very personal questions. I'm not sure if you want to be part of this, but if you are, I'll shoot them over.
I'll play, but I'm awful at these things. If you ask me anything close to like, what's your favorite movie? I will just stare into space for like 30 minutes because I cannot process those questions.
These are multiple choice.
Okay, wonderful.
That
I'm
might
here
help.
for
I
it
don't
then.
know.
Yes.
Spring or fall?
Fall, 1000%. In fact, I've polled our team. Our team is a fall and autumn team.
Well, you said they all like sweaters and hot tea, so that's the time for it.
We're there for it. Yep.
Cake or pie?
Pie. Although in my later years here, I've seriously reconsidered that, but there's so much more variation in pie. Sorry, you didn't ask for explanations, but I feel the need to justify.
No, absolutely. I normally say expound on it. If you have something to expound on, that's fine. Well,
Strong
now
opinions
you've said pie. What's your favorite pie?
Now, see, there you go. That's not a multiple choice.
That's all right. I can edit out the stare. It's fine. Not a big deal.
Yeah. I don't. Oh my goodness. I don't know. Because like my first instinct is to say peach cobbler, but then my brain's like, whoa, that's not a pie. So so I don't know. Yeah, there's an apple crisp, peach cobbler, key lime. There's a lot of choice there.
Well, I'll let you off the hook on that one.
Thank you.
I can see the smoke starting.
Oh, strawberry rhubarb. How could I leave out strawberry rhubarb?
Oh my God. You were like the third person in a row in every interview that has mentioned strawberry rhubarb. And rhubarb in my mind is very not artisanal, but it's kind of an old-timey, like not a lot of people know about rhubarb.
It's poisonous too.
What's that?
it's poisonous, parts of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You get the stalk, and that's about it. You can't eat the rest of it. That's just so funny that you mentioned that. Hot dog or hamburger?
That's a good question. I would probably lean towards hot dog, but slightly.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's Cleveland known for? What's the big food there?
I mean, all of Ohio is known for Buckeyes, right? Which are, if you're not from Ohio, it's basically peanut butter, powdered sugar, rolled up in a ball, thrown in the freezer, and then real fast you jab them into some dark chocolate. So that's
Wow.
the state dessert.
Book or movie?
Oh, that's a good one too. I like making movies better, but I like consuming books better. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's typically a consensus. If you're a tabletop role player, you're pretty used to books. You know, I mean,
Yeah, I
and that
got a
means
lot of them.
you're reading books and stuff like that. So yeah,
I'll ask you a question then. Like,
absolutely.
what's your favorite pie?
Oh, I would have to
Yeah.
say I
See.
don't I already know it is French silk.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Oh no, wait. I know what my favorite pie is now. I almost forgot. Chicken pot pie.
Oh, yeah, that's
Dangerously
a good one.
delicious.
Yeah,
Dangerously
that is a good
delicious
one.
in Washington D.C. The pie shop. If I could give any restaurant a shout out, it is them. They make the best chicken pie I've ever had. So, and they
Oh,
drive it around in a little truck too. It's
oh
amazing.
wow. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody from the UK, and we were talking about savory pies. And I told him, I said, I don't think the United States has enough savory pies.
Yeah, but we got our chicken pies.
There we go. Those are good. Well, I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on. And I wish you the absolute best in everything that you're doing, because it's also creative and welcoming. And I think it's just what we need during this time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Let's talk again.
For sure.